In the west coast lies the small, bleak town of Mermeyer, or so it's said. Famous for its yearly Hallows Eve festivities, infamous for its annual horror stories and disappearances. They say every year the entire town is decorated in spectacular fashion. Every building, every inch. They have corn mazes that span miles and even lead to different mazes. The mazes and haunted houses set up all throughout the town, some even hidden, terrify people. Some suffered heart attacks and died. Dozens of tourists go missing each year with no leads and no answers. One would think that the seemingly accidental deaths, coupled with the disappearances, would dissuade people from visiting the dreary town of Mermeyer. But one would be wrong. That's not even factoring in the outlandish drugs said to be given out by the denizens. The rumors and mystery only added to the fascination for people looking for a genuinely terrifying experience. And to deepen that call, it's not even certain exactly where the town is. Some say it moves, some say it doesn't exist, and others insist it chooses people to enter its domain. The blue sedan sped down the empty winding road, fallen leaves churning in its wake, headlights cutting through the dark as the only hint of light or life in the moonless night. Come on, you guys. I think we're almost there. Can you at least pretend to be excited? Sid's eyes were glued to the road with a frenzied focus. The closer they got, the more excited he became. For years, he followed the stories and internet mysteries surrounding Mermeyer. To say that Sid was a horror nerd would be an understatement. But this year was the first time he was able to get the time off from work and have the money to go. It didn't take much convincing to get his best friend Josh to go with. But their girlfriends, on the other hand, were less than excited about a trip to Horror Town, as people often referred to Mermeyer.
Can you just slow down, please? I think the only thing worse than going to this creepy town would be dying in a car accident on the way there.
Lauren stared out the window, arms crossed. She could swear that out in the dark forest, shapes moved and followed. Goosebumps on the back of her neck told her that she was being watched as a cold shiver ran down her spine. And miss out on the greatest Halloween of our lives? Not a chance, babe. You're not getting off that easy. Sid glanced back, unable to contain his excited grin. The dash lights glinting from the corner of his thick-rimmed glasses.
Yeah, well, maybe dying in a car accident will be better.
Oh, come on, Ash. Don't be like that. This is going to be awesome, and you know it.
Whatever you say. It's not like you know where it is anyways. Probably drove all this way for no reason.
Sid's grin spread even more, though now he was focused only on the road and his thoughts. Oh, I'll find it. It wants me to find it. The winding road snaked through the incredibly large evergreen trees that blocked out the sky and moon. The surrounding forest might as well have been a living tunnel. No landmarks, businesses, or cars in sight. Just an eternal and empty road carved through the endless tree-covered mountains. A high-pitched hum reverberated through the car's speakers. It started as a mild buzz, but quickly grew in volume to the point of causing physical pain. Sid lost control of the car as they all reflexively covered their ears from the penetrating noise. He had the presence of mind to slam on the brakes, causing the vehicle to spin and skid to a stop, lightly bumping into the guardrail. Persisting for a few more seconds, the noise finally abated, leaving the four travelers scared and confused.
Sid! The fuck was that?
Lauren was nearly in tears.
Oh my god, do you smell that?
A sulfurous odor of rotting flesh mixed with chemicals permeated the air. But as quickly as it had made them retch, the smell had shifted to something like fresh-baked maple bars.
What the fuck, man?
Josh asked, looking to Sid, hoping for some form of clarification. Sid was more distant than ever now. "We're close," he whispered, almost to himself as he stared off into the trees. Easing the gas pedal down, the car started moving forward. Concern grew amongst the other 3 passengers as Sid was steering across the road instead of back onto it. What lay across the road was only a dense thicket of giant trees, or so it appeared to everybody but Sid. The screaming and yelling from his partner and friends hardly even registered in his mind as he punched the gas pedal to the floor. This was his window, and not taking it here and now meant never reaching his destination. Why, or even if, Sid knew what he thought he understood at that moment didn't matter. He was committed. Directly in front of where he'd spun his car out was a forming tunnel. The trees weaved and bent, creating a woven and interlacing evergreen path that extended into the dark. This was precisely the type of thing he'd been searching for. If being honest with himself, despite how badly he'd wanted to believe, Sid was pretty sure this trip would be a bust, that it was all a bunch of bullshit. Lauren screamed and hit the back of Sid's seat, begging him to stop. He didn't respond as he sped the car directly off the side of the road, down a steep hill, and straight toward a tree. The vehicle was careening to meet with the immovable object when suddenly it wasn't. Everything was black. A flash of dark purple, barely more substantive than the black, illuminated the outlines of the car's frame and interior. Another purple flash, but this time, Lauren was aware that her hearing was dampened as if she were underwater. Trying to remember where she was, Lauren turned her head in the muffled dark, hoping to catch a glimpse of something familiar. Another flash, and her face met with Ashley's, but it was so wrong. Stretched like taffy, Ashley's chin rested in her lap. Eyes, unable to stay in her elongated sockets, flopped against her cheeks as her body heaved from silent sobs. Her tongue, too stretched to fit in her mess of a face, hung down to the floor, absently prodding at the dirt and loose change under the seats. Another flash showed Josh turned around in the passenger seat, looking back at her. His eyes bigger than dinner plates, and head the size of an inflated exercise ball. His mouth opened and closed vertically like a fish out of water and sat directly between the 2 massive eyes like an impromptu nose. Dozens of inch-diameter pores dotted his face, and from within each of them, many giant-headed Joshes gulped for air with their vertical toothless mouths. Lauren screamed in horror at the brief glimpses of the freak show that the flashing purple light gave to her. But no sound escaped her mouth. The oppressive void took and offered as it pleased. Lauren and Sid's eyes met in the rearview mirror in one of the flashes, the mauve energy more detracting than glaring off the lenses of his glasses. His eyes were fanatical and resolute. The person looking back at her was not the man she'd lived with for the past 5 years. These were the eyes of a stranger. The world spun and twisted, folding in on itself while breaking off into pieces that multiplied in dancing waves. Fast violet flashes accompanied by subtractive waves of black that went beyond the dark. They were more like pulses of non-existence. Reality bent and broke, stretching thin and winding around itself. Lauren's body sent her sensory information from different locations and dimensions as her mind strained at the maddening paradox of being split between realities, as the incomprehensible burden of the bridge threatened to tear her mind apart. A brilliant white flash imploded, dispelling the impossible scene and experiences. The blue sedan exploded out of nothingness into a clearing covered in tall grass. The momentum threw the car forward, tires finding no control in the soft dirt. Sid fought with the steering wheel for dominance, but ultimately the car spun and lurched to a forceful stop. Steam or smoke trailed from under the hood. No one had yet to find words as they all breathed heavily, trying to wrap their minds around the already fleeting experiences. But like a bad dream, the alien concepts were out of reach, leaving only the feeling of wrongness and existential uncomfortability. Sid was the only one who seemed undaunted as he tried without success to start the car. Whirring several times before going unresponsive, the engine had died. Ah, damn it. Well, I guess we walk from here.
Walk? Where? Sid, what the fuck is going on? What just happened and where are we?
Hey, slow down there. Everything is fine. We spun off the road, and we're in a field. There's gotta be a town close. I can smell a bakery, or something.
No, Sid! There was something. We went through something. I know you saw it. You looked right at me. The purple light. And the things in the dark. And everyone was... Well, you guys saw it, right?
I don't know what I saw.
Ashley looked at the ground, unwilling to speak on the matter any longer. She didn't even want to think about what had happened. There was this grotesque feeling of horrid disfiguration that she couldn't shake, as if it threatened to be her new reality. If only she'd accept it.
Sid, wait! What about the car? Shouldn't we, try to fix it or something?
Hey, if any of you guys became mechanics in the last few minutes, by all means, pop the hood. Otherwise, let's get a move on. We're burning daylight.
Hey, wait. When the hell did it become daytime? It was literally just pitch black out.
Babe, you were sleeping. I know you're confused, but everything is fine. Just trust me. Without engaging in further conversation, Sid started walking deeper into the clearing. A foggy confusion still plagued each of their minds. Unable to come up with any better ideas, they each hesitantly followed behind Sid through the tall grass. Up to 5.5 feet tall, the grass stalks waved in an unfelt breeze. Swaying in unnatural patterns, the grass cut at their skin, not deep enough to cause any real damage, but enough to make them uncomfortable as they traversed the abnormal clearing. Trees surrounded it in a mile-long semicircle. Everything was off, but only by a small degree. The grass was the wrong shade of green. The ground felt spongy and firm. In the distance, the tree's bark shimmered like a mirage. Wherever the sun wasn't visible, but the dimly lit gray sky seemed to cast conflicting shadows. The blue sedan appeared to reflect an orangish tint, while the front half of the car projected a shadow on the passenger's side, and the back half cast a shadow on the driver's side. While none of them had the presence of mind to pick up on any of these irregularities specifically, they could all sense that something was wrong and unnatural. Trudging through the high, sharp grass, no one spoke, each reflecting on the odd predicament they'd somehow found themselves in. The air seemed to carry a metallic tune that invaded their thoughts in a way that caused dark and bizarre versions of their id to run rampant in new and terrible self-actualizing fantasies. The scenery was almost beautiful in an untouched by man kind of way, but the nagging wrongness of the place made it entirely unenjoyable. Eventually making it to the tree line, everyone but Sid came to a cautious slow. While the clearing had been odd and slightly painful, it had at least been well lit. The tree line, however, segued into immediate shadow and darkness. It was as if someone had drawn a line, sectioning off where the light couldn't go. Upon closer inspection, there was somewhat of a line. Not so much drawn as it was grown. The forest was divided from the clearing by a border of purple mushrooms with red polka dots. "You better hurry up if you don't want to get left behind." Sid's voice came from deep enough within the trees that he was no longer visible. That was all the convincing it took for Josh to head in after him, and the two nervous women were left with a split second to decide. Follow into the dark, foreboding forest, or stay alone in a strange place. Neither option was particularly good, and reluctantly, they chose to follow into the wooded shade. Within the forest's threshold, the temperature considerably dropped, and even more curious was the cold spots. Unseen pockets of freezing air that seemed to chill bone as they walked through them. That odd combination of smells was even more prevalent among the trees. Horrid rot that gave way to something sweet and then mixed with a burning plastic odor. These smells seemed to dance and play with their senses. When one of them felt they could almost identify the scent, it would blend and change in a continuous shifting assault. After what felt like hours of walking, Sid had come to a stop. They all approached his back warily, looking for the source of his attention that had been elsewhere for so long. 12 feet away stood a strange figure. At first, it was hard to make out through the dark. But as they all stood, peering at the silhouette, it slowly began to take shape in their eyes. A robe made of an odd mossy substance hid a bulbous and tumorous form. Standing around 5 feet tall, it hungered conspicuously by a tree, its shoulders entirely uneven. But when they finally saw its head, Lauren's hand shot up to her mouth to stifle the scream that was already escaping. Upon hearing the noise, the strange figure cocked its head and awkwardly scuttled closer to the group. Its head looked like it belonged to a snail and was a light, sickly green. 2 foot-long stalks protruded from the middle of its face, leading straight up to lidless, marbled amber eyes with vertical slit pupils. They contracted and waved, shifting back and forth between each of the humans. Its toothless, rubbery, beak-like mouth opened and closed as if tasting the air, searching for words. For a few tense moments, no one said a word, each just staring at the strange green thing, trying to understand what they were looking at, or what kind of costume this was. It was Ashley who finally broke the silence.
What the hell are you?
The strange creature snorted, tasting the air as it smacked its mucousy lips.
Leave forest.
It stated, pulling a hand from its robe and pointing in a specific direction. But the hand wasn't much of a hand. It was more of a slimy tentacle that quivered and writhed.
Expected you.
It punctuated, turning and awkwardly hobbling away. Snapping out of his reverie, Sid called after it. "Hey, wait!" The creature walked behind a tree, and by the time Sid got to where they had just seen it, the thing had vanished without a trace. "Shit!" he exclaimed, looking all around and even in the trees for whatever it was that had just spoken to them.
Sid, what was that, man? Like some kind of weird costume, right?
"I don't think so, Josh. This is it, bro. The stories are true. We're in fucking Mermeyer."
I don't like this. Can we go back, please?
"There isn't a chance in hell I'm turning back. We found Mermeyer. We actually found it. You guys, go back if you want, but I'm going wherever that thing just pointed us." Sid started walking in the direction the snail creature indicated, and in a few steps was almost entirely obscured by the forest's gloom. "Josh, you coming or what? This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience," Sid called back as he walked deeper into the forest.
Yeah, I'm coming. Wait up. Come on, ladies, let's go.
Without giving them a moment to respond, Josh jogged up to meet with Sid, leaving the two women a moment to decide. Follow to a place they did not want to go, or stay in an unnaturally dark forest where inhuman freaks lurked about. People's tendency to find a false sense of security in numbers decided for them as they hurried to catch up with their boyfriends. The walk was uncomfortable, to say the least. Horrible odors and sounds came and went from every direction, creating a complete unease and lack of control or safety. When finally the oppressive trees gave way to open space and fading light, the relief they'd each thought would come did not. In front of them was a pumpkin patch. To call it such would be to understate it. This was closer to a pumpkin sea. They stretched on as far as you could see in all shapes and colors. Peppered within the pumpkin sea were strange scarecrows, dozens of them. These weren't the cutesy figures people put in front of their picket-fenced houses. These were patchworks of leathery horror. Even the pumpkins were terrifying, with 6-inch diameter gray vines covered in thorns connecting them in clusters of 5 to 10. Some of the pumpkins were massive, probably even world record sizes. In several areas unadorned with the horrific scarecrows were an unkindness of ravens cawing and cackling as they picked at the pumpkins.
What do we do now?
Lauren asked, looking tiredly at the unending pumpkin patch. We keep moving, Sid said simply and devoid of emotion, which seemed to enrage Lauren all the more.
Oh, we keep moving? Okay, should we go over to those pumpkins? Or maybe those ones? Wake up, Sid! You're acting like a complete fucking psycho! You realize nothing's happening here is normal, right?
Of course I realize that. That's the whole point. This isn't about normal. This is about the abnormal. All the shit people say is fake or dismiss as urban legends. Well, here we are. And we're about to prove them all wrong. Lauren couldn't stand to look at him any longer. The selfish bastard didn't care about anyone but himself. How could he not see or care that this was a dangerous situation?
Come on, Ash. Let's go find some help. I can't be around him for another second.
Lauren and Ashley picked a direction and started walking without another word. Josh looked back to Sid, the nonverbal question being, "What now?" But rather than replying to Josh, he answered the question by yelling back at the girls.
Good luck! Mermeyer won't cut you any breaks!
Whatever. You only slowed me down anyways, Sid muttered to himself, beginning to walk in the opposite direction. Josh was torn as his best friend and girlfriend walked away in opposite directions. Of course he wanted to have an adventure and see weird creatures or whatever the hell was going on in Mermeyer, but not at the cost of letting his girlfriend wander off into unknown danger. He turned to run after her when both of the women let out an ear-splitting scream. Already turning in that direction, Josh saw neither of them. Turning in tandem, Sid could not see them either, but did not follow Josh, thinking the whole thing was a ploy to get back at him. Josh sprinted across the field, turning his head frantically in search of Ashley and Lauren, but suddenly he dropped straight into the ground. Sid flinched at the unexpected sight and cautiously approached where he'd just witnessed his best friend go down. Step by step, his thoughts raced, still unwilling to believe this wasn't a prank or a trick. The fact that none of them were making any noises or yelling for help both made him think it was a prank, and then that they were seriously hurt. Sid saw the edges of a pit that had been cleverly concealed by a tangle of pumpkin vines, sticks, and dirt. His heart sank at the realization that this trap had been set here and wasn't some sort of prank. Sid's fears were realized, and genuine panic immobilized him after coming to the edge of the pit. At the bottom were Lauren, Josh, and Ashley, impaled on sharpened wooden spears. They were all still alive, flailing weakly. Lauren was staring directly into Sid's eyes with a spear through her gut, eyes pleading with fear and pain. Ashley and Josh were face down, with several spears in their limbs and torso. Sid felt guilt and sorrow. He felt sick watching the scene that was, at minimum, indirectly his fault. He couldn't bring himself to move or speak, just stuck staring before he felt an explosion of pain in his head, followed by a brilliant white flash, and then darkness. Sid awoke in the dark, but his eyes quickly adjusted to the dim light cast by several outdated-looking lanterns. He was underground, the ceiling and walls simply carved out of the earth. Roots came down from the top, casting eerie spiderweb shadows across the room from the lantern's flickering flames.
Well, hey there, young fella. I'm glad you stopped by. I could use your help.
The voice came from an opposite tunnel as footsteps brought the speaker closer to Sid. He tried moving, but found himself unable to do so. A strange confusion still blocked his brain from working entirely. He didn't understand where he was and couldn't feel his body. The man came into view, lending to the strangeness of the situation with his utterly normal appearance. He looked like a very short, old farmer, with jean overalls and a smiling, wrinkled face. What? Where am I?
Don't worry, I got everything taken care of. You're home now, boy.
Home? What the fuck are you talking about? Where are my friends?
Why, ain't no need for that kind of language now. They're right over here.
The old man nodded with his head in the opposite direction, and Sid turned his neck to look. A massive cavern spread into the dark underground for what looked like an infinite distance. Huge, jagged roots came down from the ceiling in numbers so great it almost looked like a bizarre forest. At the bottom of those roots were human bodies strapped to rolling carts. Their limbs were tied down, and the roots entered into them through their stomachs. An IV drip accompanied each body. Not 50 feet away were Lauren, Josh, and Ashley, all tied to the rolling carts and with roots already entering through their abdomens. Staring in disbelief, Sid could see each one of them moving slightly. They were all still alive. Sid turned his head back with murderous rage.
Once I get free, I'm going to kill you, you son of a bitch!
The old man let out a chuckle.
Well, you could try, but I reckon it might be a little difficult without those.
He said, pointing at a nearby table. Unable to help himself, Sid slowly turned his head to look at what the old man had pointed at. In a bloody mess sat a pile of dismembered limbs. Vomit welled up in his throat as he noticed something. One of the arms had a tattoo of a bloody hockey mask. An image from one of Sid's favorite slasher movies. The limbs were his. The contents of his stomach voided themselves all down the front of his limbless torso. Revulsion rushed his blood to his head, and consciousness left him. Sid awoke sometime later to see the blinding sun illuminating a sea of pumpkins.
Well, good morning, feller. Not a bad view, is it? Now look, here's how it works. You sit up here on this post, and you keep them damn ravens off my pumpkins. These are very, very special pumpkins. The kind only found in Mermeyer. When them birds come round, you hoot and you hollerin', they'll go. Be careful, though. If they catch you sleeping, they'll come take bites out of you. And I'll fix what I can, but I won't make you look pretty. After all, these critters ain't no normal ravens. Oh no, they're far from normal. But you keep these pumpkins in good shape, you hear? You do that, and I'll bring you what the pumpkins don't eat. You take care now, you hear?
The farmer called over his shoulder, waving a temporary farewell. As he looked around from his perch, he could now clearly hear the yelling and screaming of others like him, scarecrows of Mermeyer.